Senzo Meyiwa's longtime friend, Mthokozisi Thwala, is back on the stand in the High Court in Pretoria. Thwala was one of the people in the house on the night that the soccer star was killed. Yesterday, he told the court that Meyiwa was not responsive when he arrived at hospital. Mnisi is part of our team watching the story. It usually unfolds in court, but he's with us in our studios this Thursday morning. It's another day of the cross-examination of Mthokozisi Thwala today, but let's take a step back. The state, of course, still trying to paint that picture that it was, in fact, a botched robbery that led to Meyiwa's death.
Indeed, that's what they're trying to do by bringing, of course, different witnesses that are inside the house at the time of Senzo Meyiwa's murder. And it's interesting to listen to the testimonies because everybody seems to be testifying from wherever they, or their standpoint, or where they were at the time. And it sort of gives you, at times, contradictions, but also, a lot of the story becomes inconsistent at some point. But the big question for the court would also be, is the inconsistency, or are the inconsistencies material in this regard? It seems many of them are still telling the same story around two people entering the house. It was interesting hearing from Mthokozisi Thwala because he tells us how the two men entered the house and how he noticed them. The sitting arrangement, what he says is that he noticed a guy enter the house and was right behind Kelly at the time when, she was imitating different churches and how the different churches do certain things, sort of like performing for them in the house and imitating different churches. And then when she realized that there was someone behind her, then she ran into this room. He seems to have had a different vantage point and was able to have seen the movements, because he says the scuffle between Senzo and the second intruder was happening on the one side while there was this person who had the gun. It seems the whole scuffling moved to the kitchen. And what he says is that, he then saw Christian, who is Kelly's son with, Jup Jup. He then took the child and, just to put him out of harm's way. It was then at that point when the gunshot went off that he ran out of the house. Now, it's interesting because he says when he ran out of the house, he ran out of the yard and he jumped into the Ngaje's house. You'll remember the testimony of Kaya Ngaje saying there was a gentleman who jumped into their yard and told them that they were attacked. So he details those stories and how, on their way to the hospital, he kept on using this method to try and see whether Senzo was still alive. He says, I would hold his hand to see whether he would hold on to it. And on our way to the hospital, he would hold on. But when we got to the hospital, he was essentially non-responsive. It was as though he was about to die or had already died because he would let go of the hand.
Yeah, he spoke about him no longer even gasping for air during that time. People who aren't watching this closely, Linda, I think it may be lost to them just how much detail sometimes the court actually explores. I mean, it goes down to Mthokozisi Thwala being asked about the seating arrangement, for instance, in the house, both before and after they ran out.
Absolutely, because it matters from what vantage point this person was able to observe the happenings in the house. How they got there, you will remember, is completely different, to what another witness would say. Mthokozisi Thwala had a home in Katlehong. They had spent the night at Kelly's house in Malberton the previous night. He tells us about Tumelo Madlala, who was picked up, after they had gone to his house and went straight to the Khumalo home. He even goes as far as saying that he was uncomfortable with going to Kelly's house, mother's house, knowing that he had a relationship with Mandisa, who was Senzo's wife, at the time. He says, I had a relationship with Mandisa. We were childhood friends, and I was very uncomfortable. It's interesting that at a later stage, when they are at the hospital, Kelly is the one that breaks the news of Senzo's death to Mandisa.
Sure. Yeah, all very important details to hang on to as the pieces of the puzzle hopefully come closer together. Linda Mnisi, thanks very much indeed. Mthokozisi Thwala once again is back on the stand today as his testimony continues.